Ever get that feeling? Like history's on repeat, empires popping up, then crashing down. Same mistakes, different century. Well, today's deep dive, we're meeting someone who might just have history figured out, a 14th century scholar, Ibn Khaldun.
The cool thing about Ibn Khaldun, he wasn't just writing down names and dates, He was trying to get at the why. Why do some societies boom, others bust? And his ideas, they're shockingly relevant, even now.
So we're going deep on this guy. Scholar, sociologist, political strategist, the whole package. We've got his biography, pieces of his big book, The Muqaddimah, even stories of him meeting Tamerlane, that crazy conqueror. Where do we even begin?
Well, Ibn Khaldun's own life is a good place to start, right? Born in Tunis, 1332, comes from this well-off family, steeped in all this knowledge, Islamic sciences, philosophy, history. It's like the perfect setup for a guy who's going to shake up how we think about, well, everything.
So not just some bookworm, huh? This guy's in the middle of it all. Real-life Game of Thrones stuff going on, right?
Oh, absolutely. He's a high-ranking advisor, sees betrayals, alliances, the whole power struggle up close, gets exiled, even imprisoned. Talk about a crash course in leadership.
Yeah, you got to think. Experiences like that, they give you a different view, not just about people, but whole societies.
Exactly. And all this, it feeds into his masterpiece, the Muqaddimah. He's a judge, a scholar, living in Cairo when he writes this. And it's not your typical history book, no way. This thing is a deep dive into how civilizations rise and fall, way ahead of its time.
Okay, got to ask then, what's the big idea in this Muqaddimah? What makes it something we should still care about?
It all hinges on this idea he calls asabiya. Think of it like the glue that holds a group together, Shared purpose, solidarity, that kind of thing. He noticed that nomadic tribes, Bedouins, for example, they had tons of this asabiya, explains why they could take on these settled civilizations and win.
So they're united, willing to sacrifice for the group, gives them a real edge. But what happens when these tribes, they become the top dogs? Do they keep that same asabiya?
Now that's where it gets interesting. Ibn Khaldun, he argued that as these societies get richer, more city-focused, that tight bond starts to loosen up. Comfort, luxury, they breed this me-first attitude. Factions pop up, and that spirit that made them strong, it fades.
It's like they build themselves up just to tear themselves down, huh? Sounds a lot like history we've seen, repeating itself over and over. Did he have, like, a step-by-step for how this goes down?
He did. 5 stages he lays out for how civilizations go through this cycle. Starts with a new power rising up, usually led by some charismatic leader. They pull everyone together under one banner. Think like a dynasty starting or a revolution kicking off.
Got to have that energy, that unity at the start, yeah. Then what? What's next in this cycle?
Stage 2, it's all about expansion. This new state, it's on the move.
Yeah.
Influence growing, conquering, solidifying power. The empire building phase, right? Fueled by ambition and, of course, that strong asabiya.
So far, so good.
Yeah.
But we both know empires, they don't last forever, right? What happens next?
Stage 3, they hit their peak. The golden age, you could say. Economy booming, culture thriving, things are stable. Like, think of the Pax Romana or the Islamic Golden Age.
Sounds pretty sweet. But I'm guessing this is where things get a little less sweet.
You got it. Stage 4, cracks start to show. They get complacent, luxury turns into this. Decadence. The folks in charge. More worried about keeping their power than serving the people.
Yeah, the good times never seem to stick around, do they? Corruption creeps in, things get unequal. But what's the final straw? What actually takes a civilization down?
Ibn Khaldun, he said it's the internal fights, the shaky economy, and most importantly, losing that asabiya makes them weak, open to attack both from the outside and from within.
So, right for the taking? Someone else steps in, or maybe it all crumbles from the inside. It's starting to feel a little bleak here.
Well, hold on. He wasn't all doom and gloom. Ibn Khaldun believed that by understanding this cycle, leaders could make smarter choices, maybe even stretch things out a bit.
So it's not just knowing it's going to end. It's about seeing the signs and trying to fix things. What did he think a good leader should be doing then?
Justice and fairness were big for him. Leaders, they should care about their people, make sure the economy's working for everyone, and no crazy taxes. He saw that as a one-way ticket to rebellion.
Sounds pretty modern, right?
Yeah.
What about government, though? Did he think big government was good, or less is more?
He was kind of in the middle, actually. Liked a good bureaucracy to keep things running smoothly, provide services, all that. But he also warned against the government having its hands in everything. Stifles innovation, he thought, and breeds corruption.
It's crazy how he was talking about stuff we still debate today, like how much should the government control? How much freedom should people have? His ideas, they almost sound like Machiavelli or even Adam Smith.
You're right, it's wild. Here's this guy in the 14th century, and he's hitting on these ideas that economists, political scientists, they're still grappling with today. His work, it gives us this framework for understanding power, how institutions work, that balance between what individuals want and what's good for the group. It's timeless.
Okay, we've covered a lot. Ibn Khaldun's life, this Asabiyo thing, his 5 stages of civilization. But there's one thing I got to hear about. Him meeting Tamerlane.
Ah, yes. The scholar and the conqueror. Imagine it, Ibn Khaldun, a refugee in Damascus, called to the court of one of history's most ruthless warlords.
But what did he think of this Tamerlane guy? Just a brutal tyrant? Or did he see something more there?
That, my friend, is a question we're going to tackle in part 2 of our deep dive. Stick around and we'll dig into this legendary encounter and see what it tells us about power, leadership, and how Ibn Khaldun's ideas still matter today.
Back again for more Ibn Khaldun. Last time things were getting interesting. Our scholar, face-to-face with Tamerlane. Kind of makes you sweat just thinking about it.
Oh yeah, total clash of worlds, you know. Tamerlane, this military mastermind, carved out a huge empire, Persia to Anatolia, and then you've got Ibn Khaldun, the scholar.
Yeah.
Big thinker about how civilizations work.
And the thing is, Tamerlane, yeah, he was brutal, but he also dug knowledge, right? Supported the arts, sciences, wasn't just about conquering.
Right, he wanted to learn, and he saw Ibn Khaldun as this, key to understanding things, how to rule, history, even human nature. From what we know, their talks were less about conqueror and captive, more like equals, you know?
Okay, so Ibn Khaldun's at Tamerlane's court.
Right.
What happens? Does he just, tell the guy what he wants to hear? Or does he, speak truth to power?
Ibn Khaldun, he always was a sharp observer. Seems he walked a fine line, recognized Tamerlane was brilliant militarily and politically, but he wasn't afraid to push back, give advice based on, justice and good governance.
What kind of advice are we talking here? Did Tamerlane actually listen to a scholar from a place he'd conquered?
Well, there are stories that Ibn Khaldun told him to ease up on the punishments, focus on building things that would last, institutions, put the people's well-being first. He was saying, real power isn't just conquering, it's making society flourish.
Did any of that sink in? It's a lot to ask, changing how you lead, especially for someone like Tamerlane. Stubborn guy and, ruthless, to say the least.
It's hard to say for sure. Bits and pieces of info, stories from others, but no word-for-word record of what they said. What we do know, Ibn Khaldun hung around Tamerlane's court for weeks talking about all kinds of things.
So Tamerlane was gotten something out of it, right?
Yeah.
Maybe he realized that even a conqueror needs some wise advice to, make sure he's remembered well.
It's a fascinating thought, isn't it? These two guys, so different, yet they're talking. One's all about the sword, the other the pen. Makes you think about how many ways there are to be powerful and how those forces, they kind of dance around each other.
Yeah, what if Tamerlane had actually listened to Ibn Khaldun? Would his empire have lasted longer? Would he be remembered as this wise, just ruler, not just a conqueror?
Oh, total what if of history, right? We can only guess. But it shows you ideas, they have power. Even facing this huge military force, Ibn Khaldun's ideas about how to rule, justice, all that they got a hearing.
Okay, so we've got Ibn Khaldun's life, his revolutionary ideas, even this meeting with Tamerlane. But what about his legacy? Why should we, centuries later, still care about this guy?
His book, The Muqarrima, people still study it today, and not just history buffs, sociologists, political scientists, economists. His ideas about how people act, societies work, the ups and downs of history, they're still so relevant.
So he wasn't just a product of his time then. He was thinking beyond the 14th century.
Totally. One reason his work has stayed with us, Ibn Khaldun didn't just go with the traditional wisdom, the religious stuff. He looked at evidence, he observed, analyzed. He was like a scientist of human nature and history before that was even a thing.
Yeah, approaching history almost like a science experiment, way before the social sciences even existed.
Exactly. That's why scholars from all these different fields, they still find something in his work. He wasn't just telling stories. He was trying to figure out the why, the how, the forces that shape us.
Sounds pretty academic though, right?
Yeah.
But why should we care here in the 21st century? What does some scholar from 600 years ago have to do with us?
The thing is, people deep down, they haven't changed that much. Ibn Khaldun's insights about us, how societies work, they're timeless. We're still dealing with the same stuff, how to lead, how to govern, how to build a good and fair society.
So it's not just history lessons. It's like a mirror, right? Reflecting back at us.
Exactly. Think about asabiya, that social glue he talked about. We see that everywhere today. power of social movements, the dangers of nationalism going too far. It's all connected.
And that five-stage cycle, civilizations rising and falling, does that still apply now? In this globalized, crazy world we live in?
That, my friend, is the question we're going to tackle in the final part of our deep dive. We'll see what Ibn Khaldun might say about where we are now. Are we at the top enjoying the good times, or are there cracks showing? What can we learn from the past to help us deal with the craziness of the 21st century?
Okay, final part of our Ibn Khaldun deep dive. We've gone through his life, his ideas, even met Tamerlane. Now the big one. What would this guy from the 14th century think about our world?
It's kind of mind-blowing to think about, right? Dropping Ibn Khaldun into the 21st century, just the tech stuff, the speed of it all, that would probably freak him out. But beyond that, what about globalization, new ideologies, how everything's connected, economies, societies, everything? What would he even make of it all?
Yeah, I'm thinking about that five-stage cycle he talked about.
Yeah.
Where would he put us right now on that timeline?
Tough question. Are we in a golden age, like the ones he studied? Or are we, starting to slip, seeing those cracks appear?
What would be like the red flags for him? Where would he look for that asabiya weakening, that social glue coming undone?
He'd be looking at a bunch of things, for sure. Inequality is a big one, right? The gap between the rich and everyone else, it causes tension, breaks down communities. And trust, or the lack of it, in governments, the media, even science, that can lead to a real sense of, things are falling apart.
Definitely seeing a lot of division these days, politically, ideologically, people picking sides. Sounds like textbook asabiya breakdown, almost. Any bright spots, though? Anything he might see as hopeful?
I think you'd be amazed by how technology connects people, how it can bridge cultures, get conversations going, and maybe, just maybe, he'd see something positive in how we're starting to face global issues together, like climate change, recognizing that, hey, we're all in this together, right?
So, same forces that pull us apart could also bring us together, huh? Depends on what we do with them. This is all kind of theoretical, though. Can you, give an example? How would Ibn Khaldun's ideas help us make sense of something specific, something we're dealing with right now?
Let's take climate change, right? Global problem needs global cooperation, long-term thinking, stuff Ibn Khaldun was all about. He said societies that can adapt, that think about the future, not just today, those are the ones that do well.
So, tackling climate change, it's almost like a test then, a test of our global asabiya. Can we act together for the good of everyone, even generations we haven't met yet?
Yeah, exactly. And he'd probably warn us against, quick fixes, policies that just look good now but hurt us down the line. He knew societies often make choices that make sense in the moment but screw things up in the long run.
And that goes back to his big idea, right? History isn't just random stuff happening. There are patterns, cycles. We can actually learn from them.
Totally. He thought understanding those patterns, seeing the warning signs, it gives us a chance to do things differently, to break out of those cycles.
So what's the bottom line for our listeners? What can we take from this guy, Ibn Khaldun? He lived in such a different world, but what can he teach us here in the 21st century?
I think his biggest lesson is think critically. Don't take things at face value. Look deeper. Question your assumptions. Try to understand what's really going on, the forces shaping the world. Don't just watch history happen. Be a part of it,
That's a pretty powerful message, actually.
Yeah.
We've reached the end of our deep dive, but it feels like we're just getting started.
It does, doesn't it? That's the thing about Ibn Khaldun. He gets you thinking. He doesn't give you easy answers, but he gives you the tools to ask better questions, to think harder, to face the challenges we have now with a clearer head, a sense of where we fit in the grand scheme of things.
Well said. Thanks for joining us on this Ibn Khaldun journey. Hopefully it's made you curious, inspired you to dig into his work yourselves. Who knows what you might discover?
Like Ibn Khaldun might say, the past is a prologue, right? Let's learn from it.